I hesitated for a long time about whether to share this story. It felt too personal, too ordinary. But last week, I was sitting in my parents' kitchen. They're in their 70s now. They were drinking tea, just sitting in silence. Not the awkward kind. The kind where words aren't needed anymore. Then my mom suddenly turned to my dad and said, "Remember our first fight?" He smiled. "You threw a pillow at me. Because you deserved it." And they both laughed. That evening, I realized something. Their love story isn't one big fairy tale. It's thousands of tiny moments. Funny ones, painful ones, awkward ones, tender ones. I asked them to tell me everything. From the beginning to today. They talked for 3 days. I recorded it all. What you're about to hear isn't a movie script. It's real life. Two people who walked through 40 years together. No decorations. No censorship. Just the truth. Maybe you'll see yourself in this story. Maybe it'll help you not give up when you want to run. Or maybe you'll just feel that love. It's like this. Imperfect. Hard. And the best thing that ever happens to us. My dad was 19. He worked at his uncle's garage, dreamed of owning his own business, and wore a denim jacket he'd painted himself with acrylics. Looked terrible, but he thought it was cool. My mom was 18. She lived with her mother in a tiny apartment, worked as a waitress at a diner, and saved money for college. She wore dresses she sewed herself and never wore makeup. Couldn't afford it. They met by accident. Dad was fixing his bike outside that same diner. Mom was leaving after her shift, carrying books. She'd signed up for night classes. She tripped on a crack in the sidewalk. Books went everywhere. Into a puddle. Dad says, "I saw her fall and I laughed." Not mean laughter, just... She looked so helpless, so... alive. Then she looked up, and her eyes... I stopped breathing. Mom says, "He just stood there laughing, the idiot." I wanted to hit him. Then he started picking up my books. They were wet, dirty, and he wiped them with his jacket. That awful painted jacket. And he smiled so shyly. I knew I was done for. He walked her home. They talked for 2 hours. Standing outside her building, talking about music, movies, who they wanted to become. When he asked for her number, she gave him a fake one. "Why?" I asked. She smiled. "Because I was scared. Scared that if he called, I'd fall in love. And if he didn't, I'd break my heart. Easier to give a fake number and run." But Dad didn't run. Next day, he was back at the diner. And the next. And the next. For 2 weeks. I knew she worked there, he says. So I just waited. Every day. She'd come out, see me, roll her eyes and walk away. But I could see her smiling. On the 15th day, she walked up to him and said, "Look, you're either crazy or in love." He answered, "Maybe both." She laughed and went for coffee with him. It was the best date of my life, Mom says. We sat in this cheap diner, drinking 25-cent coffee, talking about everything. He didn't even have money for a pastry, but he gave his last coins to buy me a second cup. I fell in love that second. Dad adds, I knew she was the one, not because of chemistry or passion, but because with her I could be silent. And the silence wasn't awkward. They started dating, went to parks because it was free, shared headphones on a cassette player. He drew her cards because he couldn't buy real ones. She baked him cookies that always burned. They were terrible, Dad laughs, but I ate every single one, because they were hers, her care, her love. The first year was easy, because they didn't know who they really were yet. They were playing perfect versions of themselves. The real test was waiting.